governor who won by 15 points just 5 months ago now has the worst approval rating of any Virginia governor in over 30 years. She just vetoed not one, but two major gambling bills and killed a new mattress tax, surprising allies and opponents alike. And then her office put out one of the most unusual press releases we've ever seen from a governor. What's really going on in Richmond? We break it all down. From the Family Foundation, I'm your host, Victoria Cobb, with our guest, Dr. Todd Gathje. Well, welcome to Speak Up Virginia. We're glad to be back. As you can see, I'm not Candy Cushman hosting myself, as we often are, but I'm thrilled to have Dr. Todd Gathje with you here from our team. And man, I mean, this is the moment to have you because there is so much going on the day that this drops is reconvene session. So this is the moment where the General Assembly is, taking on all the things that the governor has done since last they touched the bills, right? They passed their bills and they head them under the governor, and then she gets to work her magic, and now they get to react.
Yeah, we'll be watching, of course, the bills that we were concerned about, but I'm going to be really interested to see sort of the dynamics of the discussion back and forth, because you have a governor that made some very curious decisions in terms of her actions and some responses by the members of the General Assembly.
I think she got some people mad, actually.
I think so. She ruffled feathers. So I'm really curious to see how this is going to turn out.
Yeah, now I think we have to set the stage a little bit because there's sort of something in the backdrop of all these bills, which is that the governor's approval rating has come out.
That's right. Yeah.
The governor has had there have been some polls, and this governor is not sitting in a great spot.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of surprising how quickly this happened.
I'm not surprised. These are some terrible things this legislature's doing, but fair. It is unusual for sure.
Very unusual. But, I don't know, is it buyer's remorse? I mean, you kind of saw that in New York City with Mayor Mondami. He came out and started making some decisions. So, these poll numbers, though, I don't know if that had an influence on some of her decisions when it came to some of this legislation.
It's a good question.
Yeah.
So just to give everybody the details on the polls. So there's a Washington Post poll that came out, and it pretty solid poll as far as how many people they included in the poll and all of that. And it turns out her approval is only 47. Disapprove is 46. And then there's a group, of course, that don't yet have their opinion. I never know who those people are, if they just have their head in the hand stand or what, because you probably had an opinion going into this, and you have to have heard something about what's happened the first couple of months. Yeah. But this is interesting. And then there was a second poll done that actually was done by State Navigator, I think is the name of it. I might get that a little bit off. It's a newer polling group, but it actually had 47-47, so it's kind of like a tie. Yeah. So similar, both saying basically the same thing. And what's like historically, just so people understand, this is pretty low. So this is the lowest approval rating or highest disapproval rating, I don't know which way I should say it, since all the way back to George Allen, like 30 years. Yeah. This quickly into a term. Like you barely got started, you've barely done anything, and people already kind of are disliking what you've done. At this point in time, you had Youngkin was 54-39. So that's a pretty significant difference. Mark Warner, I don't know how this guy was so popular, but he was 78-20. Yeah. So apparently people really liked him for a little while. We've seen him for a lot of years now. But and even Northam, who was generally not very liked, was at least at 48 approval. Yeah. So she is really at the bottom.
Right. The composition of the General Assembly is fairly similar. If you look back to 2019, 2020, when Northam was in office.
Because he had both chambers.
Yeah, both chambers, and it was kind of like that. So she walks in sort of the same scenario.
Except she won by more than him. I mean, she had a commanding victory.
She really did.
The fall is maybe more dramatic.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
So the poll also showed that 41% think that her policies make Virginia less affordable, versus 31 who say more affordable. And if you remember, that was like her central message of the campaign. Everything she talked about. That was the whole
theme of the General Assembly this session. Was affordability.
Yeah, so she, ran on that and, wants to be talking about that, kind of tried to pitch herself as a moderate, and instead we got a pretty aggressive agenda in this year's session, which we've talked a fair amount on this podcast about, but between redistricting and guns
and also we can't forget that there was a lot of national attention on her.
Yes.
And so that probably helped influence the way certain people may have been on this issue and where they were at. So that was a driving factor of this as well.
Yeah, it's a fast free fall, and I think it was national attention because the bills were so extreme that went in that I think it just kind of blew up. And so that's the context of all of this session that they're going to go into today, that they're going to debate about these things and that's sort of what's in the backdrop of those decisions that she made.
Yeah.
So I think we should start by talking about maybe one of the more unusual things I've ever seen out of a governor's office. So she puts out this press release, and it isn't what she signed or vetoed. That's the normal, right? You sign something, you veto it, you put out press releases. It's actually a press release of what she didn't do? Is that
right? Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about this.
So people have probably heard about all of the tax bills that were introduced that would have raised taxes, things like tax on leaf blowers, DoorDash or whatever it is. All of these
gym
things.
memberships. I remember that
gym
one.
memberships.
Yeah.
And it was a number of them that got introduced, but they got carried over to 2027, which is a polite way of defeating the bills, at least for the session. And she wants to kind of show that, hey, wait a minute, I wasn't behind these tax increases, so I'm going to issue a press release that I didn't have to sign bills that never made it to my desk.
Well, that's big of her to not sign bills that didn't get to her desk.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that deep reflection that she made over something she couldn't do anything about.
But it
doesn't really say what she would have done if they had gotten to her desk.
But there was so much just people out there in opposition to all of these tax increases, and I think she felt it from a polling standpoint that she had to do something to sort of alleviate this negative, as she refers to it, misinformation.
Right.
And so she wanted to clear the air, apparently. And so this is, I've never really seen this. This is kind of a shocking thing to see. I don't know if I would go so far as to say maybe it's never been done.
But certainly not common.
But I have not seen it in the few, the many years I've been in state government. And
I mean, they literally put it on their press release. They actually said the office of the governor does not typically comment on bills that failed to pass the General Assembly, which I think is just awkward. The whole thing feels a little desperate.
You know what the awkward thing is? That there's nothing being said about her signing bills that actually lower taxes.
Right.
It's all about what she didn't do to raise taxes, but what did she do to lower taxes on hardworking Virginians? And there's no press release.
Because there's no press release. Bills, because she didn't do much to help, the average person work through life and housing and all the issues. But they, she did, to your point, she mentioned this, this misinformation. That's why she's putting it out.
Yeah.
So, but it's just interesting because, the background section there is sort of like this section she's trying to tout some affordability things, but let's be honest with what's happening here. This is damage control. This is no question. Her polling's in the tank. Voters know it, and they know that she's made Virginia less affordable. And I think Republicans have done a pretty good job hammering on that. And kind of pointing to all these taxes throughout session.
Yeah, every week they had a press conference in which they were talking about affordability or the lack thereof in all of the bills that were being passed. So they really, to your point, they really did jump on that issue.
Now, I have to laugh at one of the bills that she did actually veto was the mattress tax. So out of all the things that were going to raise our cost of living, which this is stupid and irritating, I just think it's funny that she held her big veto on the mattress tax. You want to tell us a little bit about what the point of that whole thing was?
It was a bill that would have required retailers to participate in some type of single recycling program, and then for Virginians to then pay for a new fee on every mattress purchase as well. And so, it's one of those programs, one of those taxes that just was. It was ridiculous, but, she saved her veto for this. It is kind of...
It's just one of those things where it's they found a million things to raise taxes on and, put in all these bills. And admittedly, I mean, this, again, it's just typical left-wing, we have an agenda, we want to, not that recycling is a bad thing or anything like that, but it's just we're going to do this, and then we're going to pass the tax off on the taxpayer. So I am glad. I mean, not that I buy a mattress every year, but I do think that at least was a little bit of her recognizing this is an obvious place where she's making.
Well, if I recall, if we go back to the leaf blower, which did not pass, and that she didn't have to sign, right?
She let us know that.
She let us know that. If I recall that bill, it actually would have allowed localities to prohibit gas powered, but then it would have taxed the electronic devices, the electronic leaf blowers that you would use. So
Right.
you would prohibit one and then tax the other.
Yeah.
She didn't have to weigh in on that one, obviously, but
Yes.
those were another example of the ridiculous tax bills that we saw this session.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's one of those where she's desperately trying to like rebuild the image that she wanted to have,
Yeah.
and so she's throwing out these bills. But I mean, I would have much rather had her veto the payroll tax, for example, where 1% of our paychecks is going to go straight out of our pockets before we even get it. You know, it's like, here comes your paycheck. Oh, don't mind me while I take 1% out, which, I mean, truly, that is you might as well just reach in my wallet, grab my cash, and take it for the government. I mean,
that is an immediate hit to a family, and if you're talking about affordability, I mean, that families are going to be crushed by that. And so, there's an example of one that she could have
vetoed that
could
one.
have vetoed
I would
that
have really
one.
appreciated that one.
Yeah, but no, she went for the mattress
tax, because Well, tell us about some of the other things that are going to be not affordable that she also didn't do anything about or even signed.
Well, we're rejoining Reggie.
Yes.
So energy costs are going to go up. We mentioned the payroll taxes.
Yep.
But there's going to be some other things too that we're going to have to be careful about. You have marijuana, which the commercialization. So what's going to happen there is it'll impact the social costs, and then that's going to eventually
They're going to need us to pay for those somehow.
That will increase taxes.
Right. And also extended leave. They changed, family and medical leave, and that is going to take a toll on businesses. They're going to really, really struggle. And when businesses struggle, guess what? We feel that.
Right.
We end up paying the price for them trying to figure out how to make enough revenue to cover. I mean, if a business has to make more money to cover an employee that they're paying who's not working, that's coming out of the people who buy the product.
Right.
Sorry, but that's how that works. Basic economics. I
That's
never quite understand how they don't get this. But anyway, nevertheless, so we've got the affordability governor, but not so much.
Yeah.
That's the net outcome.
Right.
There is another big story in this sort of reconvened session, which is that we got some unexpected vetoes.
We did.
On something that is important to the Family Foundation, which is that on April 9th, Governor Spanberger actually vetoed the Fairfax Casino.
That's right.
So tell us a little bit about all this.
Yeah, and that's been an interesting battle, during session legislatively. Yes, we're against any expansion of casinos. This was a bill that was brought by Senator Surville from Northern Virginia. And interesting, Fairfax just rallied around this or against this bill. You even had a fellow senator sending out emails and
it was
mailers.
awkward. They were like senators from Fairfax fighting against each other
From
in the same party.
Same locality. They sit 2 desks away from each other. And we're talking about Senator Boysko, of course. Even Fairfax, the Board of Supervisors came out and said, we don't want this. We figure there's other ways to raise revenue and help the locality, but this is not going to do it. And you really saw some dynamics here between the governor and what her position is and what 2 senators are arguing about. At the end of the day, we're very pleased that we're going to say no more casinos, at least for this session.
Yeah.
That was a tremendous win or surprise.
It's interesting because you didn't hear that much from the governor about this during session, so I don't think people saw this coming. I certainly missed that memo if it was going to happen. And the lobbying that went into this, $3.5 million spent by the casino folks trying to get this thing, and like the 4th year in a row they've tried to get it. So it's kind of wild to see that go down.
Right.
Not disappointed.
I think we'll kind of get into the next one in skill games. It's just a reminder that gambling industry does not give up.
Right.
They haven't given up. They didn't give up on casinos however many years ago before they passed, and we have the 5 that we have now. They're not going to stop trying to lobby and get another one.
And I just want to remind people, we were only supposed to get casinos where it was economically depressed and they needed the revenue. And somehow I don't think Fairfax hits that definition. But nevertheless, this was going to magically just, we told them when this happened, this will not stay with just these 5. But, they don't listen to us.
That's right.
Well, sometimes they do. But, maybe Governor Spanberger listened to us. We've been saying this is bad stuff. And she apparently agreed in a veto.
Well, I think she may have listened to us on the skill games.
All right. Tell us about skill games. This is exciting also. Good news here.
For those that are not familiar, these are the skill games that so-called skill games that you see pop up in restaurants, maybe gas stations, convenience stores, places where actually families may go and visit or get gas and grab items. And we've worked with a coalition to stop this for the past 3 or 4 years now. We've been very successful in it. This year, we actually had the bill go to the governor's desk. We kind of thought it was going to get signed. and she came back and said no. She vetoed it, and she said in her arguments, in her statement, that she is concerned about where they're being placed and that they're in economically depressed areas or something, not exact language, but kind of like that, and that it's going to hurt those who are struggling with addictions and poverty. And it seemed like she was using a lot of the same arguments that us and other organizations that we've been working with have been saying all along.
Well, we've seen that this isn't a partisan issue, that we get some Democrats that agree with us that this is, and we get some Republicans that are terrible on these gambling issues.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, just we didn't know where she fell.
Right.
I hope this is a principled stance like it sounds like, and that could mean good things. Because remember, there's still also iGaming. iGaming basically was in a conference, and technically they could bring up iGaming in the special session that starts the day after this reconvened session, but we hope it's dead. But I mean, if that were to come out, I'd love to see that this principle would also apply to what happens if it's on every phone, let alone in every convenience store.
There are some legislators, and I don't know if the governor falls into this camp, that are saying, wait a minute, we need to have a gaming commission established that will oversee all of this. And it could be that maybe that's maybe a position she's taken. I haven't seen her say that publicly, but there are a lot of legislators who are saying no because of that. But you're right. There are some that are in the General Assembly that have a very principled position on this, that they do not like gambling. They're put off by the expansion of it.
Well, and we've seen terrible surveys of just how much gambling is sucking in, particularly the young men, and so many people are starting to know somebody whose life is getting like ransacked by their addiction to gambling. So maybe there's more people realizing, oh, this isn't just something we're saying. This is you know, somebody that I know and I have
their
personal
lives
experience.
that have been impacted.
And I would just say this about these commissions when they say, oh, we need this governing body over it. Used to be, Family Foundation's been involved in fighting gambling, and it was, it's been lottery, then it was, pari-mutuel wagering off of the races and all that. But one of the things that I've always struggled with is we have these things like the Lottery Commission. But if you look at their task, it's both to promote and to regulate.
Sure.
Well, here's the problem. A lot of times regulation harms the promotion.
That's right.
So I don't feel like having that dual mission is very effective. So if they're going to create a commission over skill games or iGaming, and it's going to both promote so you get the revenue and regulate, I don't know
and
what
then
the point is.
What ends up happening is that the gaming industry comes in and they kind of dominate the conversation. They lead the discussion over that. And the last thing you want is the industry actually dictating what the regulatory policy should be.
Yep. Well, all this to say, we might actually escape this session without increased gambling, which would be an actual blessing from the Lord, because it didn't seem like there was a path to dead end this stuff for this year. I mean, again, to Todd, to your point, it's going to come back and back and back. We know that from the history, but a really big deal and really helpful. And, every year that we don't have gambling is some people that are not addicted. Same thing with, abortion. We can't outlaw it all the time, all the way, but there's a fewer babies lost. Like, this is incremental. That's how public policy works. We do what we can, and we fight that as hard as we can. And so, it's important. And she did roll back. I don't know exactly the reasoning on this, but she did delay the marijuana, the pot shops in every corner. We got a 6-month delay on that. It's 6 months that it's not on the corner. I mean, I'd like a total veto. Again,
we would love the veto. We would love actually an amendment that says that localities could determine for themselves. They could hold a referendum. We didn't see any of that.
Right.
I think at the end of the day, whether it's going to be November or January or July 2027, Virginia's going to look and feel and certainly smell a lot different.
Right.
And the problem and the real harm is going to come to the families and the communities.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question. And I think, at the end of the day, you've got these vices, and we're going to be fighting this in every way for a long time. And it may take until people are really harmed by the marijuana for people to start to understand what we've been saying, kids being harmed and so forth. And there were some other bills that were just interesting. I'll just mention, the January 6th bill, which she made some changes to. I don't know. Do you want to sort of mention what she did to that bill? She sort of, I don't know if she widened. She basically said, we're going to look at how to teach this, but almost some people are saying, well, it went from optional to they're actually going to look into it and actually have to do something with it. Other people said, well, at least it looks like you could get a more balanced teaching of it.
I don't know if it's technically like a study bill. I guess it kind of is. But to your point, whenever you see those kinds of bills, be careful because then they can lead to something.
Well, it should have been vetoed.
It should have been vetoed. And we, of course, this is getting into the whole compelled speech. It's getting into, the importance of teachers being able to manage a class and be able to speak to issues and help bring clarity to students. And I think that, we would like to have seen a veto. Her amendment is, to your point, it's really kind of unusual. We'll see where that goes.
Yeah. Well, I think what we know is, despite her attempting to reframe herself, this is a lot of this is just like, I want to reposition myself. I think what we do know is she is still not a moderate in any way, shape, or form.
No.
We're pleased at what she did that was in the right direction, but if you're just doing it to try to bolster your approval ratings,
Right.
we're going to see it's going to be like this the whole. Approval ratings go up and down and all
That's
over.
right.
So I don't know where that leaves us.
Yeah.
I would say this also, we're not seeing a lot of affordability. We're going to see a Virginia that is less safe, that is less affordable, that is less free as a result of this session. And there's just no getting around that. And she did not do enough to prevent all that mess. She made the gun bills worse. That's not an issue that we take up, but she literally made already unconstitutional bills on Second Amendment wider and more comprehensive.
Yeah.
So, she's, for people who are trying to reframe this as, oh, she's a moderate, do not worry. That is not actually what is happening. That is just the media trying to spin you again.
Right. And also, we have a budget that's looming, too.
Yeah, we need it. Good point. Yeah. Tell us what that means for us.
So, right now, they're sitting in conference, so they're trying to debate and try and figure out how to come to an agreement on a budget. And so they're supposed to come back on the 23rd to be able to agree on a budget, also take up bills that are possibly left in conference. So remember that. They're very far apart.
Yes.
Both the House and the Senate, as well as the governor, kind of mixed in.
Yeah, there's sort of a Governor Spanberger, Louise Lucas thing going on where they're shouting at each other across the media.
And now you have where she's vetoed bills that were going to be revenue streams, things like the casinos and the neighborhood slot.
They baked that money into the budget.
And so now it's almost like they have to kind of go back to the drawing board, if you will.
And usually a governor, typically, if they veto a bill that has revenue, they usually find another way to patch the hole. This governor did them no favors. She did not feel any need to patch the hole. She just left them a big mess.
I've said this.
I don't know if that's rookie or if that's like part of like her and Louise Lucas shouting at each other across the media. I don't know what that is.
Well, let's put partisanship aside and looking at it. The academic in me thinks this is incredible because we really have two branches of government that are really fighting over the purse strings here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and it's really fascinating to watch them. Who's trying to get the authority here on this? Is it a Lucas who's been there for I don't know how many years?
Long time.
You kind of see Spanberger, though she's been in Congress, she's kind of like the new person on the block, right?
She
and
is.
so there is this dynamic that's going on. And I've said it before, the budget process is where politics meets math. And I don't think it could be any more evident than in this case right now, where you have trying to match the numbers to match the policy or desired policy, and then you have the governor trying to weigh in on this. And she's got all of the approval number issues that she's trying to manage. So this is going to be very interesting to see what happens. I don't know if they'll come to an agreement by the 23rd.
I'd be impressed if we have a budget by July 1 when it takes effect. And also, I think we have to mention, because most people don't know, technically the budget overrides the law, which is crazy. And if you think that's insane, you're correct. It is insane. So occasionally you can veto a bill, and all of a sudden it sneaks back in the budget. So we will be eyes on that budget with regards to these gambling bills, because somehow this seems to happen in Virginia where your budget actually takes.
That's right,
precedent.
and I think on these gambling bills too, the margin to be able to override the veto
remind
is
people what they need.
So it's 2/3, and they're right at that line.
Yeah.
And so they could say, hey, wait a minute, we don't want to have to go back too far on the drawing board. Let's get your vote on this, get it approved. It's in the budget, and maybe we can get out of here on time. There could be some of those discussions happening, but we'll have to wait and see what happens on the floor.
Well, and the bottom line is this is not Governor Affordable. This is not the affordability governor, and this is not a moderate. We got a few things we're thankful for, and we are encouraging people to thank the governor on the things that she vetoed. That is always good practice. We'd love to see more of that. So let's partner up where we can, but let's remember what we're actually doing to Virginia. I mean, collective bargaining is still coming, and all the things that we are deeply concerned about. I do want to, before we leave, make one announcement for our viewing audience, which is that we're in the middle of not just stuff at the state level, March for Life and Reconvened and all the things, but there's also something historic going on at our nation's capital, which is that we are celebrating the 250th anniversary of this nation by having an amazing event called America Reads the Bible.
Yeah, that's right.
What this is it is it's been going on for a few days now, so you may have seen something about this, but it is a week-long reading of God's Word from start to finish. Lots of awesome people that you would know. Franklin Graham. I don't know, who are your favorites that are reading?
Well, I know that. I don't want to spoil it, but we're going to be reading.
Todd and I are readers. We're the awesome people, actually, but there are some other cool people.
But in our group is Colton Dixon. So if you're a Christian artist or Christian music fan, he's going to be in our group.
And the guy that's had a skillet, right?
Yeah, that's right. John Cooper, president of Liberty University, Dr. Don DeCostin. Yeah.
So. And Governor Youngkin's reading earlier in the week, so there's a bunch of Virginians mixed in here.
And then you have some politicians that have men and women of deep faith that are going to be reading. So it's just going to be an exciting time.
Yeah, this is all happening at the Museum of the Bible. So you can actually, if you're spontaneous and you have time the next couple of days, you can actually buy a ticket, go up to the Museum of the Bible. It gives you the admission of the museum during that day, and then you can go and watch the readings, which is cool. There's some worship music in between. I understand the readings and all of that. So it's quite an awesome thing. Or if you're really not available to just all of a sudden drop everything and run to the Museum of the Bible, you can actually stream this on Great American PureFlix.
Good job.
So you can actually, I had to put it all together. There's been a merger, and I'm still working on all that. But yeah, so there's a registration where you can literally just download and stream it. And so Todd and I will be reading Saturday morning.
Saturday morning.
Yeah. So feel free to join us one way or the other. But I guess with that, go ahead.
I don't have too many tough names to have to.
I have a couple.
Say.
Okay. I do have a couple. Or at least I'm just a bad reader. I don't know which one.
Okay.
But I'm working on them. But I'm going to get them square. At
least we're not like in Numbers or
No,
Leviticus.
we got the good stuff. Yeah. We're in Acts, so we'll get to read the books of Acts. We do have friends that are in some. I have friends that are in some really tough books. So I am thankful for that. So with that, I think we'll call it a week, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week. We are stronger when we stand together.